Hey there everyone, welcome back to Utility Sports, and in today's video we're going to focus on an Orlando Magic trade guide, and we're within 10 days of the NBA trade deadline. I'm so excited for it to be here. Just a reminder, I'm going to be live on the channel for a majority of the week of the NBA trade deadline, so please hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell as well, so that you do not miss out on any of those live streams or any of the other trade guides between now and the NBA trade deadline. I'm really excited for the final little ramp up here before we start to see a ton of big moves. And I think the Orlando Magic are a fun team to talk about as well. So let's jump into a video preview here where we look at Orlando's current record. We're going to talk about, their team as a whole as well. I've actually been pretty impressed with them this year. They've been a bit better than I was expecting, even though I did pick Paolo Banchero to be my rookie of the year coming into the season. I liked him a lot in the draft process, and I thought that he was the most NBA ready player amongst the bunch, and I think he's really proven that. But I think there's other elements to this team that I've really liked as well. We'll look at their draft assets. They're actually one of the teams that I think is best positioned in terms of adding some more young talent to their roster, which is a lot of fun to talk about. We do have an NBA mock draft up on the channel, so I recommend checking that out after this video if you're a Magic fan. We'll look at their long-term cap space. Usually a lot of teams don't have cap space as a priority heading into the NBA trade deadline, but I think Orlando is one of those few cases that maybe does. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Then we'll look at some of those tradable players, contract situations for those guys, and we'll discuss who I could see actually getting moved. And then we'll maybe identify some potential trade targets. I think Orlando is one of the toughest teams in the NBA to kind of pinpoint what they're targeting. Even on draft night, they had the first overall pick. I think a lot of people circled Jabari Smith as their pick, and then they kind of made a decision on Paolo Banchero, and I think they made the right one, clearly. I felt that way kind of coming into the draft, that Paolo was the better fit for Orlando anyway, clearly because some of his on-ball ability to create and score. He's been awesome for them, and I think that they're a hard team to predict what's going to happen, but they've made some pretty solid moves in the last 18 to 24 months, so that's a lot of credit to them. Then we'll look at some projected activity level as well. And this is one of the most important parts of the video. Do I think Orlando makes a lot of trades? Do they make one trade? Do they make no trades? That's really what we're going to talk about. I'm going to give you kind of a spicy temperature reading from what I'm feeling from Orlando. But again, Orlando is one of the markets that I feel like I have the hardest time predicting what they're going to do. Some other teams kind of, play their cards out in the open, and some keep them close to the chest. I think that the Magic do a pretty good job concealing their future plans to a point where nobody really knows exactly what's going to happen. But I'm giving my best analysis here on this. I feel a lot more confident about most other teams in the NBA, to be honest. Orlando is one of those few that I'm, like I said, not really sure on. But we're going to try and get through it, and we're going to give my honest predictions, and sometimes I'll be wrong. Current record, they're 20-31, which is 13th in the Eastern Conference. I knew this team wasn't going to be good this season, but I have to say 20-31 is better than I expected. Now, I didn't quite see them owning the Boston Celtics the way that they have this year, and I did really like Paolo, and I was wrong about Franz Wagner in his draft class. I've already admitted that in numerous videos on the channel up to this point. Pretty much every draft class, there's going to be one or two guys you miss on, just with the sheer volume of how many players get drafted. You look at 60 drafted players, probably 20 impact UDFAs that actually get a chance. Out of 80 players, if you get one or two wrong, you're doing pretty good, honestly, just because some guys you're going to be higher on, they don't live up to that expectation. And then usually one guy a year that I'm kind of just typically lower on than a lot of the consensus feel around the nation. And then sometimes I'll be wrong on those guys, but sometimes I'm right. So Franz Wagner, I have no issue admitting I was wrong, and I'm glad to see he's playing really well for Orlando, even though they do have the fifth worst record in the NBA, which is a positive sign for them, right? They have really good lottery odds potentially this season at securing a top 4 pick through the lottery, and they'll be playing with house money if they were to potentially move up to number 1 or number 2. It would be a dream scenario for this team. But I think the biggest thing is we can really, for the first time in a long time, I think, see the future of this team. And I can actually agree and say that it's a bright future. I've sat there and I've watched the Wesley Iwundu time. I've sat there and I've, watched when Nikola Vucevic was supposed to be the franchise player and Evan Fournier's his Robin to the Batman. I've been through it all watching this Orlando team. You think back to some of the selections that they've made. Trading Victor Oladipo for Serge Ibaka, There's been a lot of questionable decisions, but with where they're currently at, their future, I think, is really bright. Paulo, Franz, that's exactly what every NBA team is hoping to have. Two big apex type wings who can handle the ball, create shots for themselves and for others. It's kind of like a young Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. Now, I don't think that they're going to get to the level that the Celtics are. That was kind of my big concern with Paulo is, hey, I think he's going to step into the NBA and be really, really ready to score and play at a high level immediately. But what does he look 3-4 years from now? How different of a player does he look? Does he have superstar potential? For me, I'm still a little concerned about that. Now, I think his athleticism has played fairly well in the NBA, but we knew he was going to come in and play great. I think Franz has very good potential as well. Now, I'm not trying to sell Paulo short. I think he could be an all-star level player in this league for sure. But is he going to ever ascend to that top 10 type of star? For me, probably not, but that's okay. You don't necessarily need that, especially if you build your team really well. And in addition to Paulo and Franz, you have multiple big men, but specifically two that I really want to highlight. Wendell Carter Jr. Is flat out better than Nikola Vucevic. That was a phenomenal trade for them. I said at the moment it happened that the Bulls got fleeced. I never understood giving up 2 first-round picks and Wendell Carter for Vooch. I just thought that was a brutal trade at the time. Obviously, maybe it played its way into landing DeMar DeRozan, Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso in free agency. But with some of the Bulls' injury luck, I mean, it's been really, really tough to watch that. Vucevic is just worse than Wendell Carter, and the Magic have 2 picks from that deal. And then Bol as well. I thought Bol was a very interesting draft prospect when he came out. I was kind of shocked when he fell as far as he did. I thought teams in the 20s should have really explored taking him just based off of his size and some of the play we saw at Oregon in his very short stint in college before, injuring himself. Of course, it took a few years to get going. Took a couple trades to find his footing, but now he has in Orlando, and he's averaging a block and a half a game. He's one of the most fun players to watch in transition, and he's been very efficient as a transition player. I think that's one of the big concerns people have, or one of the big concerns I have about kind of the media in general is people can't really distinguish the difference between Bol and Victor Wembanyama. Bol is an awesome downhill player, transition player. He's not going to ever be the hub of your offense. He's not skilled enough to be the absolute dominant half-court juggernaut that I think Victor Wembanyama is going to turn into. Wembanyama is just more skilled. He's got a better ball handle. He's got a better shot from the perimeter. He's smarter defensively. He knows how to rotate over in time. He's a better shot blocker. He's just better pretty much in every single category, but that's not to knock Bol, right? We're comparing him to, in my opinion, the guy who's going to probably be the best prospect I ever evaluate as a scout. So I'm not knocking Bol at all. Bol's been awesome this year, and I've loved to see it. He's been really fun to watch. To be honest, I've been considering getting a Bol jersey just with how enjoyable he is to watch play for the Orlando Magic. So this team, even though they're bad right now, the record's not great. They're 5th worst in the NBA in that regard. They've been a lot of fun to watch. They've got some really nice young talented players, and there's actually some stuff to build off of here, even though I don't love the guard situation a ton for them. So let's look at those draft assets. They own all of their own first-round picks, so that's a really good positive sign already. If you're in rebuild mode and you owe picks, it's a really tough spot to be. Luckily, Orlando does not. In addition to all of their own picks, they also have that Chicago Bulls 2023 first-rounder that is top 4 protected. That will likely convey this season unless something crazy happens in the lottery, which would completely change the Bulls' franchise outlook. But for the most part, they're in a really good spot here with the idea that, hey, not only are we going to add 1, but probably 2 lottery picks this season. Of course, one of them could be maybe number 1 or number 2, depending on how their draft lottery luck plays out. And then they also own Denver Nuggets 2025 first-round pick from the Aaron Gordon trade that same season when they moved off of Gordon and Vucevic back-to-back. It was, I think, the real defining factor in this franchise's history. They committed to selling. They got off of Fournier. They got off of Vucevic. They got off of Aaron Gordon. And they chose a real direction. They were no longer good with being the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference and getting waxed in the first round of the playoffs in 5 games. They just were no longer good with that. And because of that, you finally have star potential young players who I think are actually really built around pieces that I think at the top of their game, they're all going to be better than a Nikola Vucevic level player. And I'm very excited about that for the direction of this franchise. And they have all their draft assets to play with in trade or to continue to add talent to this young roster. Long-term cap space, this is one of my favorite parts of this video. Most teams that I've been having to say, look, they're just not going to operate with the idea of opening cap space. Orlando's one of the few that actually can. Right now, if they were to keep everybody around, they'd be projected around $12 million in cap space this offseason. But with some of the options and non-guarantees on some of those contracts, it's possible that even without a trade, we could see this team around $22 million in cap space, and that's without a trade. But if they were to move off of some contracts in some deals, they could easily open up around $40 to $50 million in cap space. Now, it would take some pretty egregious selling. They'd have to make some, kind of tough decisions to get to that money mark. But if you do, and then you find yourself with some lottery luck, you could look at adding 2 top 10 picks and a max level player to a core of Paulo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Bol, Wendell Carter Jr., and you're probably cooking with gas. You probably don't even have to get off of Markelle Fultz. I did not include him as a tradable player in, the deals that could probably open up $40 to $50 million in cap space. Orlando is positioned really well to take a massive leap forward. And you look at some of the players who are going to be out in free agency, there's some players who are worth paying. Now, are all of them obvious no-brainers? No. Does a guy like Kyrie Irving excite Orlando in free agency? That's a really big question. Kyrie Irving would probably be the most well-known, most star-like player that they've had in Orlando since Dwight Howard when he went to LA. I think it's something they'd actually have to think about. I'm not the biggest Kyrie guy myself. I think that his on-court play is awesome and phenomenal. I think some of the stuff you get off the court is a little bit of a distraction and kind of hard to win with at times. But we've seen him kind of really focus in this year. Now, I'm not sure what his future looks like in Brooklyn. There's also James Harden potentially out in free agency. Now, I don't think Harden's going to go to Orlando. If Harden were to leave Philly, I think he would go to Houston. But I'm just saying there's options out here that if you do have a max level space open, there's legitimately great players you could put next to your team. And I would probably start to think Orlando could be kind of a sleeper team in the Eastern Conference if they were to make a move. Now, again, I'm not saying that they're going to do this, and it would take some obvious moves to get off of to even open up that window, but I think it's worth talking about at least as a possibility. Now we look at some of those tradable players, and Gary Harris is the first one that comes to mind. 2 years, $26 million contract. That final year is non-guaranteed, though. At $13 million annually, it's a pretty fair contract in terms of what he's producing this year, and also a pretty easily tradable contract as well in terms of matching money across the league with the 125% rule. And one thing about Gary Harris is he's having a career year shooting the 3-ball, shooting above 40% from 3 this year, with pretty good volume as well, shooting over 3 3-pointers a game. So he, I think, does have some value around the league. I think teams like LA would have significant interest in him. Of course, I'm talking about the Lakers. I think even the Dallas Mavericks would consider a Gary Harris trade if the pieces came together right. Does Gary Harris net you a first-round pick? I'm a little unsure about that. You could probably get 2 or 3 second-rounders for him. Kind of think Rui Hachimura deal in terms of the value that Gary Harris could probably command on the open market. Orlando might just look at that and say, hey, we're just better off keeping Gary Harris. We don't need to trade him for a few second-rounders, especially when we have as many draft picks in the first round as we do, and we like our young core. Do we really need to make a move like that? The answer is probably no. But Terrence Ross, expiring deal, there's a little bit more pressure to move off of him. Of course, they got him by trading Serge Ibaka to Toronto, what feels like a decade ago at this point, honestly. Probably is getting close to that, actually. And Terrence Ross, good player. I don't know if he moves the needle for really any championship contending teams. I think he'd be a helpful bench player, but come playoff time, I'm not sure what his minutes and consistency would really look like. Mo Bamba's very interesting. 2 years, $20.6 million deal. Second year is non-guaranteed, but it is an option in there. So Bamba's future is kind of interesting. Out of all the players on this list, I think Bamba's the most likely to get traded. Just given the emergence of Bol, the way that Wendell Carter Jr.'s played, I don't think Mo really fits anymore into Orlando's plan. Now, I know they do like the combination of length, size, and shooting versatility from their big men. Mo is a perfect fit into some of those things, but just with the overload that they have at the big man position right now, is Bamba really in their long-term plans? For me, the answer to that would be no. They gave him this non-guaranteed deal when they weren't even sure what Bol was going to give them. Now they're getting a little bit of, consistency and good play from Bol. And because of that, I think Bamba becomes a little bit more, you're a little bit more willing to let him go than what I think they would have initially been this past offseason. Chuma Okeke, 2 years, $8.9 million deal. I threw him in here. He's a salary cap filler. At one point, Okeke was somebody who I thought was a pretty intriguing player defensively, especially when he was young as a prospect. I thought, hey, there's maybe a little bit of something here. It was a surprise to me when they drafted him as high as they did. But I think that that's just not really panned out very well. I think that's a missed pick and something that they're not going to make a move on. And I don't think a lot of teams are really circling him as a trade candidate, if you know what I mean. And then Jonathan Isaac. I think he's the most interesting player potentially on the market this trade deadline because you look at someone who 3 years, $52.5 million on that contract. Now, it's not fully guaranteed, but it is $17.5 million annually. He's a 6'10", 6'11" type wing. Very, very good defensively. He's got some of the best defensive feel in the NBA. Now he is just finally working back from his injury he sustained in the bubble, almost 3 years ago. So he's been out of basketball for a while. If you trade for him this year, you're not really banking on a lot, but you're banking on maybe the second and third year left on those deals, that he becomes something that is a constant rotation player for you and maybe even a starting level player. For Orlando, I know a lot of Magic fans are going to say, whoa, why would we trade him? We've been sitting waiting for him to come back. Why do we move him? Well, part of why you were sitting and waiting for him to come back is you didn't have Paolo Banchero. And at the start of that, you didn't have Franz Wagner. Now you do. Where does Jonathan Isaac really fit long-term, especially if you plan on keeping Wendell Carter Jr. and Bol around? He's kind of your fifth front court player. And not that that's a bad thing. That's a really nice fifth front court guy to have. But at $17.5 million, it's kind of a hefty price tag, especially when Franz and Paolo become extension eligible. Jonathan Isaac will be heading toward free agency. So you could get out ahead of this bus a little early. You're maybe jumping ship a little early, but trading Isaac probably clears up some actual long-term financial constraints that I think will come around at some point. Now, I think I'm a year ahead on this. Isaac probably doesn't get traded this deadline, but next deadline, I think there's going to be some real rumors about that. So I'm just going to say right now, I wouldn't be shocked completely if Isaac's at least on the trade block and they're discussing him as we speak. But the one thing I do believe is that he probably doesn't get dealt, and this is probably a next February type of trade that we see go down. So when it comes to potential trade targets, here's my first player. And like I said, I really have struggled trying to pinpoint what Orlando could target, look to add. Russell Westbrook's a name that's come up for me simply because LA, with the Lakers, I think they'd have interest in some of those guys like Mo Bamba, Gary Harris. And if you're able to take Russell Westbrook in, this is the way that Orlando could open up money. You get off of Gary Harris, you get off of Mo Bamba, and you open up some money that way. Now, I think Russell Westbrook would actually be missed by the Lakers. I think he's been really important for them this season. I know a lot of people love to slander him, call him Russell Westbrook, and there's a lot of fun in doing some of that stuff. But he's been a very good player for the Lakers this season. He's actually second on their team in plus minus. And I think they'd really miss him by trading him out. He's important to them being successful, honestly. And off the bench, he's really sacrificed a lot of his personal game. But it's done wonders for this Lakers team, who started the year 2-11. Since then, they've been a much better, much more competitive team in the West, with a real chance to still make the playoffs. So credit to the Lakers. I think trading Westbrook would be actually a mistake from them, just with how he's played this year and the willingness to accept a new role that I think a lot of people were questioning if he was going to be willing to do that. From the Magic perspective here, the only reason to do this is if you get incentivized with draft assets, and then it's also that avenue to open up money to maybe go target somebody in free agency. Heck, even Russ would be a pretty awesome player here with the Magic. Now, I don't think he would necessarily be a long-term fit because I think they're looking to continue to groom Paulo and Franz in terms of their ball handling, on-ball capabilities at the NBA level. But I do think Russ is an interesting player to bring up in terms of the money component, the free agency component, and also maybe getting incentivized with some draft assets if the Lakers are really desperate to move off of him. Now, like I said, I don't think they should, but Rob Pelinka doesn't know what he's doing. He's not a good GM at all in this league, so it wouldn't completely shock me. The next one here I have targeted is Fred VanVleet. I think it's likely the Raptors explore trading him. He's on the final year of his deal. He's looking for a bigger extension. He wants something in the ballpark of 4 years, $140 million or so, which is pretty hefty, right? That's around $30 million plus a year, 35-ish, if my math's doing me correct. And that's a little much for Fred VanVleet, who I just don't think is worth that type of money. He has already turned down the Raptors extension that they've offered him of 4 years, $114 million, which I think is actually like kind of the high point anyway of what he should be accepting, what he should be getting. Now, of course, I don't blame him if he wants to accept a contract of higher value. If I was in his shoes, I would try to do the same thing. But the writing's kind of on the wall that he probably is not playing in Toronto next year, which is why Orlando, if they feel like Fred VanVleet's an actual upgrade over Markelle Fultz, over Cole Anthony, over Jalen Suggs, which I think he is. I think he's better than all of those guys. I think they should look into this a little bit, but if you have to give up a first-round pick in the next 2 drafts, it's just not worth doing. I would be pretty hesitant about that. Now, if it gets to that Nuggets 2025 first and you maybe have to give that up, I would consider it. I think VanVleet would be a really nice fit onto this team. He's a nice deep-range shot creator. He's a good defender when he's guarding his own 2 feet, staying in front of a dude out on the perimeter. Now, with how much length that Orlando has, VanVleet's fairly well complemented. But at the same time, we've seen Toronto struggle this year. Does that mean Orlando adding him, do they get that much better? And my answer to that is probably no. I don't think that they ultimately do trade for Fred VanVleet. But I do think he's one of those players who is available on the market. Does make some sense with their roster construction, a guy who could fit their team, bring some nice veteran leadership into the locker room while still being a very good player. I do think he would help Orlando. I really do. But I just think the price in terms of the contract, how much it's going to take to get him in a trade, I think it's all a little too steep for Orlando. So I don't really see them trading for him at the trade deadline. My final option here is Colin Sexton. And the Utah Jazz, I think they're really going to make it apparent what their plans are for the NBA draft lottery in the next week or two. They're going to aggressively look to sell players, not named Lauri Markkanen or Walker Kessler. I think it's very possible we see Malik Beasley traded, who I think would also be a pretty interesting fit, by the way, in Orlando. I think it's very possible we see Jared Vanderbilt traded. I think it's likely we see Mike Conley traded. I think it's likely, or at least possible, that Colin Sexton were to be traded. They're going to explore moves. There's no question about that. Danny Ainge, this is all part of his master plan. He put together a roster with a bunch of decent players. They started the year better than they should have. They've come down to earth, but in that time, what he's allowed these minutes to be for these guys is showcase games where, hey, team plays Malik Beasley, hits 4 3-pointers. They're like, I think Utah's been a great example here as well of a team that not only are they showcasing certain things, but they've also found some big time players for themselves. I really liked Walker Kessler coming into the NBA draft. I talked about how productive he was going to be immediately in the NBA. Somebody who can protect the rim at a high level, but was also a really nice box out king at Auburn. He did a phenomenal job of that. And I think Lauri Markkanen, he's the player that nobody saw coming. And he took a huge step forward in his game, specifically with an enlarged role, which is really tough to do. We've actually seen him be vastly more efficient in a tougher role. And it shows that sometimes rhythm is really an important thing in the NBA. In Utah, he's playing with that rhythm and that consistency, knowing when his looks are going to come. And I think Utah is in a spot where they feel like they can afford to pivot, trade some of these guys out, and Colin Sexton's on that short list. Now, you look at Sexton's stats, and that's someone I actually worked with, or do still work with at this point, told me that they thought Utah won the Donovan Mitchell trade because of Colin Sexton. And he's like, well, if you look at Sexton's numbers And, that's a sign that maybe you should watch some more games. Sexton's not nearly as good as Donovan Mitchell. I think that anyone who really watches the NBA knows that. But, he was operating off of Basketball Reference. He's looking at the numbers and saying, whoa, well, Sexton scored 25 points a game in a season before. And yes, he's done that. And I still think he's a nice upgrade here for Orlando. I think with his age, he fits this current group better than, a Russell Westbrook or a Fred VanVleet, even for that matter. So I think Orlando should at least, explore this one a little bit, maybe consider it. But if Utah's looking for a first-round pick for Colin Sexton or maybe 2 firsts, I don't really know what Danny Ainge's going price is. It always seems like it's 1 or 2 picks higher than it should be, and somehow he gets those deals done. I don't think Orlando should make a big move like this for a guy like Sexton, but I think if they were to make a trade, would be one of those candidates to maybe explore bringing in as a long-term guard for this team, although I'm not exactly sure, which is why I need your guys' suggestions on some trade targets. Let me know in the comment section down below who some other trade targets would be for this team. To be honest, I don't think the Magic are going to make a ton of big moves specifically for a big-time player. I think that the smart thing for them to do is patiently wait this out, continue to build their team, add assets through the draft, and then make a big move when needed. I think that's the smart approach. I think that's the best long-term approach for them. But let me know if there's any players around the league that I missed as trade targets for the Magic this trade deadline. And then when it comes to projected activity level, I put the Magic in the mild category. I don't think that they're going to go make a big move. I think that they'll maybe explore trading off some of those kind of middling contracts, the Gary Harrises, the Mo Bambas of the world. I think they'll explore that, maybe Terrence Ross as well. They'll look at some offers. Another guy that could make some sense for them would maybe be Patrick Beverley from the Lakers. If you can get, say, a second-round pick with him for Terrence Ross, is that something you kick the tires on? And then maybe you're able to reroute Patrick Beverley to a third team and get an additional second rounder for him, even if it's a ways down the road. It's a way to maybe explore getting, 2 second-round picks this trade deadline to give you a little bit of extra assets to make into other deals as sweeteners. But again, that's not a big-time move. Not sure if that's going to move the needle for this team that much. But overall, I think projected activity level, they're going to be pretty slow, pretty mild. They're not going to make any big time trades. Kind of like what I talked about in this video. I did highlight some names that would make sense if they made a bigger move, but I really don't see that coming for this team. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you did enjoy this video. A lot of work goes into these videos to prepare myself, not only to talk about a team for 25 plus minutes, but also exploring the trade market, figuring out potential trades that can make some sense, that financially work and kind of fit the timelines of both teams involved. So I hope you guys do enjoy these. If you did, hit that like button. It lets me know I did a good job in this video. Subscribe to the channel for more. It lets me know you enjoyed the content we're making. And then hit that notification bell. About 18% of our viewers actually have that turned on already. I don't even do a very good job asking for you guys to do that. So please just take a second, turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on more future utility sports videos. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the very next utility sports video.